Venezuelans are gearing up for a crucial presidential election this Sunday. The country's current president, Nicolas Maduro, is expected to clinch a victory, but he is facing a major challenge from an opposition leader. The election comes as Venezuela plunges deeper into a crippling economic and humanitarian crisis. And questions remain over whether Maduro or anyone else can lift this country out of despair. Well, CBSN contributor Alex Kliment is here to walk us through the latest. He writes for Signal, a newsletter produced by GZERO Media. So thanks a lot for joining us. Okay, so there's an election.
Yes.
But is anything really going to change? I mean, is this election pointless?
Well, in a certain respect, this election doesn't matter.
Right.
And what I mean by that is that what keeps someone like Nicolas Maduro in power is not, at this point, electoral legitimacy. What keeps him in power is the continued loyalty of economic elites, but above all, the military, which sticks with him, right? In a situation of tremendous humanitarian crisis, economic collapse, he's consolidated virtually all political power around himself anyway. What matters is that the men with guns stay loyal to him. And so I think, you know, the election this Sunday, we might see some kind of surprise, but extremely unlikely. I mean, Maduro controls all the levers of electoral power. But the real question is what happens after the election. I mean, as you say, this is a country in crisis. How long can Maduro continue to cling to power, by which we mean how long can he continue to ensure the loyalty of those military elites? Right.
People are fleeing the country. Other people are taking to the streets on a regular basis. What about this opposition leader? Is this a legitimate guy, or is this another puppet to play a role in this pantomime, if you will?
So his name is Henry Falcon. He is a former state governor, a former loyalist of the Chavista revolution. He, by some polling measures, is actually more popular than Maduro at this point. He's polling about 25–30%. Maduro's a couple percentage points behind that in some polls.
Right.
But the reason that most outside observers think that Maduro is going to win, despite that, is that Maduro and the regime control all of the electoral infrastructure. Turnout is likely to be very low. Something like 70% of Venezuelans say they're not actually going to vote.
Wow.
In a country where inflation is 13,000%, people may have other concerns than voting in an election, the outcome of which is
survival.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Falcon stands very little chance of actually winning, and the main opposition party's coalition has actually chosen to boycott the election. They've gambled that it is better to sit out the election rather than to give legitimacy to an election that they think will be skewed against them.
Right, because the world is watching. If there's by some long shot, Falcon wins, would anything change?
Well, we played with this idea in the newsletter this morning, the idea that it might behoove Maduro to let Falcon win, and this is sort of an unconventional view. But if Maduro thinks that he could control Falcon, remember, this is a guy who was part of the ruling clique for a long time. If he thinks he can control him, it might be a winning strategy to lose the election to this guy.
Because it doesn't matter, he still has the power.
Yeah, because Maduro would still have a lot of power over the institutions of government. Allowing Falcon to win would make it impossible for the U.S. or EU or other Latin American countries to put more sanctions on Venezuela, right? They've threatened to impose harsher sanctions after this election, and it might make it possible for Maduro to negotiate a delicate exit. I mean, again, this is an unconventional view, but it's something worth considering if you're thinking about how Maduro can try and find an exit from what is clearly a deepening crisis for him.
I mean, like you said, the most sort of interesting thing is going to be what happens after, how the international community reacts. I can't imagine what even more sanctions will do to this country where people are starving and leaving in droves. It's just a sad situation. It really is.